So push sticks are not the most exciting part of woodworking, but I do think they're very important. Anytime you make a rip cut, you should reach for a push stick first. What they do is allow you to hold the stock down and to keep your hand away from the blade. There have been too many horror stories on table saws that could have been saved by just picking up a push stick. Not only is it safer, it really helps you do a more accurate and better work. It allows you to keep the stock pressure down and against the fence as it's going past the blade, because that's where you get in trouble. When stock starts to pull off the fence, it can run into the side of the blade and kick back towards you. It's just not a safe situation. So push sticks will help you not only push it through, but also keep it against the fence and keep the cut safe. They come in a number of different styles, and I tend to keep different ones on hand depending on what I'm using them for at the time. The first one, kind of the quintessential one that you always think of, is kind of the fish shape with a little chunk taken out. With these, as you're passing stock through the blade, this stays at about a 45-degree angle, and you push it through. I've never felt very comfortable with these. It doesn't seem like it gives you a lot of control. There's only about an inch of material here that's on the stock itself, and you can tell pushing it, it's already starting to come off the fence, which really defeats the purpose of using a push stick in the first place. Something like this or this, it's kind of the L-shaped. They tend to work better for rip cuts for me. As you can see, it locks onto the back of it. Push through, it allows you to keep leverage, steady rate, pushing it against the fence and also down to the table. So these are probably for rip cuts what I'll reach for first. Another one that comes in handy, and usually you'll use this with larger sheet goods, is kind of the paddle style. You'll see this is similar to what you'll have on a joiner, but it has a lip on the back of it. So as your work goes through the saw, pretend this is a big panel, this will allow you to keep it down and pressure against the fence over here. So it really helps you apply pressure and keep the push rate even as you go through the blade, which prevents burning and a lot of other problems that can pop up. So those are really the kinds that I use most often. One other one that's kind of a souped up push stick, it's not my favorite either, but it does have its place. With the Biesmeier fence that we were talking about earlier, you can actually make a push stick that really gets your hand away from the blade. So you just fit it over the stock. You'll have to keep pressure here, but otherwise that pushes it through. It works fine. Something about it just doesn't feel right to me though, so I don't use it very often. What I do like it for is if you're making a very thin cut, this will allow you to get pressure right at the blade where you need it. And you're going to cut through these no matter what kind they are. They're made to be cut up and then thrown away. When they get too chewed up, it's time to throw them away and just grab a new one. But like the inserts, it's easy to just template route these from one you've cut out on the bandsaw, or just bandsaw them. They don't have to look good, they just have to work. So this is the style push stick that I use most often. You can see it's really similar to the aftermarket ones that you can buy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with these. My only problem with them is they get a little expensive because you tend to tear these things up. See the bottom edge here is torn up. And because you want to throw them away, I just hate throwing away $5 at a time, so I usually stay away from those and make my own. This one is modeled after basically the same style though. I've cut a 1/4 inch gap here for that lip on the back that will help you hold the back of the stock. And I've also extended the toe out on it a little further. It just lets you get more leverage. These work really well for rip cuts. Just to show you how it works, we'll make a small rip cut here. Sometimes you'll usually start with the stock behind the fence, and it's a little awkward sometimes to start with the push stick there. So I'll set it on the fence and pick it up when I get to that point in the cut. In terms of safety, when you're raising the blade, you also only want to raise it no more than about a 1/4 inch above the workpiece. Just there's no reason to have more blade exposed than needed because you're exposing your hand to whatever it could hit of the blade. So just raise it a little bit, start the cut. So as you can see, they're easy to use. They don't slow you down at all. Gives you a nice clean cut. Having that smooth pressure on the push stick really makes for a smooth cut. The only thing that could make this a little better is to use featherboards, so we'll talk about that next. So you definitely want to keep some featherboards around your shop. These are pretty simple tools. This one is made in the shop. Without these, you can tell it's just a bandsaw cut made all the way down the length of it, about a 1/4 inch apart. A little monotonous to make, but they do a really good job. The way these work is as you're pushing a board through the saw for a rip cut, you'll position the featherboard to hit the side of the board and cover about half the length of the blade that's exposed. So a traditional one doesn't have these on it. So the way it would work is it would be a much longer board, and you would have to take some clamps and clamp it in place. Those get a little frustrating to me. They want to wiggle on you a little too much. On this one, we've attached these are kind of on-off magnets made by Chestnut Tools. You can position it wherever you want it, turn the magnets on, and it's really solid in there. So as you position it, you're going to want to toe it in just a little bit on the back edge. So what that does is it's going to keep your workpiece pressed against the fence the entire time. So once you lock it down, then you're ready to make a cut. So as you can see, the featherboard worked to keep this pressed up against the fence the whole time you were cutting, give you a nice clean cut on that edge. I really like these magnets. They work a lot better than trying to clamp the piece down. So this is the kind of featherboard that I usually use. A couple other options you can look into though. This is a big, heavy-duty one made for ripping really big timbers. It's made for the popular woodworking shop here for a different saw. And basically, it locks in with support strips, kind of fences on either side. So it fits over the saw like this. One thing to keep in mind, if you've got bolts or anything like this on your saw, you'll need to accommodate those somehow in the rail that goes over it. You do clamp this down, but the nice thing is you just need one clamp. It really locks itself in place. You just want to keep it from shifting around as you work. And if you want to buy some kind of aftermarket featherboards, there are a number of those available. I like this kind. They kind of slip right into the miter gauge, the T-track on your saw. And they clamp down. You can adjust them. I'm going to tighten them down really well. Then you can adjust them in and out, tighten them that way as well. They work great. But whatever you do, it really does help, especially with important cuts when getting it exactly the right width is important. It's going to make your work a lot more accurate, and it also makes it a lot safer because it's pushing that against the fence, and there's not the chance that your board is going to run into the side of the saw and kick back towards you. That's where you get into trouble at the table saw.